It's okay. No. It's water. It's all water. Here, let me just get the ice cream back.
And we're recording this because I just want to start off with I just knocked over a glass of water.
It was all part of the script. It was all part of the script.
I don't know.
Like I said, I think
It shows the
yeah. Don't worry. The
humanity.
carpet's gonna absorb it. It'll be good.
It's football season, so my kick reflexes are like, they're high right now.
Okay, Maze.
Well, welcome to Little State Big Voices with myself, Shahida, and my fabulous co-host, Tracy.
Hey, y'all.
We are together in the same room with this fabulous person.
Hello, everyone. David Morales.
And he's going to be our guest today. He is running for mayor. I think most of you know that by now. He's running for mayor to replace Mayor Smiley. So we want to hear, his thoughts and his ideas for, Providence and what he thinks should be fixed. He's talked a lot about housing, and that's very big right now. So we're going to let him get into it.
No, thank you both so much for the invitation. It is appreciated. And as noted, right now we have a housing emergency in front of us, and we've seen a lot of working people across our city that are being priced out. They're being priced out when it comes to renew their lease, and they're watching their rent skyrocket. And the fact that just a few weeks ago I was speaking with a working mom who had shared with me that in Lower South Providence, her 2-bedroom apartment went from $1,400 to $2,000 over the span of just renewing her lease, just demonstrates to
So
us.
that's 1 year.
Just 1 year.
From 1,400 to 2,000.
Exactly.
That's scary.
It's not sustainable in any way, shape, or form. It is not sustainable. And that's why Providence has been ranked the quote-unquote least affordable city in America for renters. Because when you combine and compare the median salary and household income of a working family in Providence compared to the average cost of rent, which at this rate is $2,200, the gap is just so wide. And so there is something that needs to be done, and from the perspective of what local government's responsibility is. And I think at this point in time, it's our responsibility to have some local laws in place saying that rent can't go up by more than 4% on a given year in order to provide a sense of stability to those that are already living in our city. And at the same time, we need to be focused on building more housing, but to do it with intention. We can't just have more 1-bedrooms and studios being built left and right, especially when they're starting at $2,200 plus. We need to be very thoughtful about the development that's coming into our city. And so I'm also advocating for making sure that if there is a developer that wants to build in Providence, there's an expectation that 1, they're going to provide affordability within some of the units, and 2, that they're going to build a variety of units. And it's not going to be exclusively studios or 1-bedrooms.
So, and I like that idea because I've noticed that there is one particular organization or one particular group that's has bought up just about everything that was vacant in Providence. And I do feel there needs to be some kind of regulation on that. So when I understand what your regulation is, going forward, how do we just stop that?
That is a great question. So how do we stop private corporations from buying out homes in our neighborhoods? Without question, one of the biggest issues that we are all aware of because we see it happening in real time.
Yes.
You see signs that say Strive Realty, Compass Realty, and we're going to name them.
Say the name, but yeah, I'm
We have
glad
to
he's
name
saying the name.
Absolutely. No, we have to name who the bad actors are. And unfortunately, what is happening is these homes are being bought up. They're either being converted into student rentals at price points that a working person cannot afford, or perhaps they're being bought up for the purposes of being general rentals, but still being done in a point where most working people cannot afford to live there. And as a result, that increases the average rent within that neighborhood. And so we have watched as certain homes and neighborhoods have suddenly transformed. You look at Venice Street, located in the Elmhurst neighborhood. It used to be a street that was home to about half a dozen single-family homes. Most of those single-family homes were bought out, were demolished, and were then built into triple-deckers that are now student rentals. That literally went from a street that was home to working families to now being converted into a street for, again, college students who can perhaps afford to pay more, whether that's through student loans or through their parents.
A segment of college students can afford that because they come from a certain level of privilege, or if a student who is from a working class family were to try to rent from those types of units, they're looking at getting into enormous debt. to be able to afford that. So that's a secondary problem that occurs with this scenario we're talking about. Now, Shahida and I are both from Boston. Mass was notorious for having rent control. People used to really, really want to get an apartment in Cambridge, Mass. Back in the day, this is like the 80s and 90s, because it was a rent controlled city or town. Is Cambridge a city? City.
Mm-hmm.
So is that something that you are looking at as far as a solution, or what solutions do you have in mind?
Yeah, so stabilizing the cost of rent is just one part of the solution, without question. I think we need to have a model very similar to Portland, Maine. For the last several years, they've had a rent stabilization model very similar to what I've described, where annual rent increases are limited at 4%. Mm-hmm. And if there is a case where a respective property management company or landlord tries to break the law and renew a lease where the rent is higher than that 4% threshold, there is a rent board that is focused on reviewing and making sure compliance is actually there. And if there's not, then there's fees and penalties associated with breaking the law. In other words, there is actual enforcement. And I think that's what makes the Portland, Maine model one that we can look at and try to make changes based on our own local needs, but try to be able to use that model as a base. Okay. And even just going back to what we were talking about, though, with the corporations buying out the homes in our neighborhoods, what we can do is we can incorporate a transaction fee anytime a large corporation tries to buy a home from a person. Mm-hmm. Because I think at the minimum, it is our responsibility to try to discourage that practice. Legally, we can't stop them from buying more land. They have the property rights to do so. Mm-hmm. But we can say, if you're going to purchase that home from a person, you as the company will have to pay a 20% transaction fee that goes directly back to the city.
That was going to be my next question, is where would that 20% go and what kind of funds would it support? So
that is a great question, because I think one of the better practices we need to adopt within our city budget is to have more restricted receipts. For example, I believe that anytime you are to get a speeding ticket, regards to speeding cameras or red light cameras, it should go directly into a specific fund. Because most people get frustrated when they get the ticket, right? And they're like, it's just going to go to the city. But I always believe that when a person has a better understanding of how that money is going to be used, perhaps it doesn't sting as much. Mm-hmm. And so going back to this idea of like, where would the transaction fee funding go? Ideally, it is going towards home repair funds for smaller homeowners that cannot afford it, but they have tenants. It can go towards affordable housing development, but those funds take time to be able to actually build up and then be used on a project. But all that to say is I think any of the funds that we incur has to go towards some type of housing initiative.
So, and I do like that. That's a great idea. And Tracy has a question written down that I think really kind of comes into this way, because you're talking about, corporations and how they're able to come and buy up stuff. And you're not supported by like any PACs. It's all ground roots. Please, Tracy, ask that question.
I'm going to go right off the paper because I want to nail this one. So how has refusing corporate PAC donations influenced your policy making and community trust?
Oh, that's a great question. Because I want to be very clear.
That is.
Campaign contributions certainly impact public policy. And I've seen it play out in some very negative ways that has been harmful to community. In the last 6 years that I have been at the State House as a legislator, I have committed to not taking corporate PAC money for any of my campaigns. That means I don't take money from Blue Cross Blue Shield. I do not take money from companies such as National Grid or now Rhode Island Energy. And for the reasons of that, I am not beholden to any of their interests. My focus and priority is to always make sure that the laws that we are fighting for are going to benefit and support the people in our city, the people all across our state. But as noted, I have seen how corporate PAC money can influence how decisions are made, whether it's at City Hall or the State House. And for that reason, we have a lot of neighbors that are frustrated, asking why hasn't more progress been made on this issue? And more likely than not, you can trace it back to campaign finance.
Favors, that's the thing, is they feel like once a corporation gives you something, they expect something in return, whether they say that, outright or whether it's implied. But that's usually kind of the sentiment when it comes to politics. And I think that's where you stand out as a candidate, because when I see you on social media, because that's where many of your constituents will actually see you for the first time, I see a real person. I see someone who has personality, who has depth, and who seems to genuinely care. And that's one of the reasons that we were so interested in meeting with you, because we're tired of, the canned politicians. We are tired of these kind of Build-A-Bear politicians that have
That's a
come
good one.
our way. You know what I mean? It's literally, a group gets together and they want to build the perfect candidate, and the candidate almost has little or nothing to do with the actual campaign. And you seem very involved with your own campaign. So tell us a little bit about that. You made many firsts, being, the first of your age group to accomplish so many things. You've got your master's from Brown. You're the youngest Latino elected to the Rhode Island General Assembly. You've got your master's in public affairs. So tell us what it's like to be the youngest, the first, to break ground in so many things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It certainly comes with a lot of responsibility. And it is something that I've always taken very seriously, is the way that I approach the work I do at the State House, the way I advocate, the way I speak on the House floor, the way I prepare for a debate in the House committee hearing. And I say that specifically because there are a lot of expectations in terms of either A, an expectation that one is going to fail, or two, an expectation that one could be pleasantly surprised by how well a young Latino is able to compose himself and advocate for his community. And so it is a responsibility I've taken very seriously, recognizing that I'm more often than not the youngest person in the room when it comes to certain policy conversations. But I use the lived experience of how I grew up, that being to a single immigrant mom, that being an ESL learner in an elementary school, and being able to recognize that my experience is one that is very important and has to be used in a way where I'm able to incorporate my ideas, just knowing how would this decision have impacted a family like mine growing up. Because we don't have enough folks with lived experience that are at the decision-making table.
And that's so important that you mentioned it, because we're all people of color. You and Tracy, both Hispanic, African American, and we carry the burden of, when we do reach certain levels and we are at certain tables, that we carry the weight of the whole community. Other people don't have that weight. And so they don't necessarily feel like when they go out into the community that they're representing the whole community. It could just be themselves or their special interest groups. Whereas you understand that. And I think that right now, especially in minority communities like Providence, South Providence, Cranston, African Americans and Hispanics are really kind of dealing with a lot. And instead of looking towards our government, we're kind of blaming each other for certain things. And how do you think you can go about as mayor? Because I feel like it's just very much so needed, a coming together of all minority groups, because we don't utilize the elected offices the way other groups do. Other groups, they might have their mayor on speed dial. We don't reach out to the mayor, except for Tracy. She does. So how do you kind of, because going in as mayor, you're gonna have to mend some fences, just in the communities. How do you see that, and how do you feel that you can go about that?
It's all about making government accessible. Letting the people in our communities know that, yes, you could actually reach out to your public official. And you should demand answers, accountability, and progress, because we work for you. We work for the community. It is the taxpayers that fund our salaries, whether we're part-time legislators or we are full-time executive officers. It does not matter. We work for the people. And the best way to facilitate that, because it's not enough to just say government should be accessible. The best way to facilitate that, in my mind, is to actively host and promote public gatherings, public meetings, bring people to their local library, have a conversation as to what the city budget looks like, walk them through how their taxpayer dollars are being used. Let's hear from our neighbors about one of the nuances that they're dealing with in their neighborhood, whether it's a pothole, whether it's an ongoing issue that they are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. It is our responsibility as government to listen and to respond. And unfortunately, I feel like the last 3 years in our city, we have seen a government that has not been responsive, to the needs of lots of our neighbors. And to the point, it's gotten to where a lot of neighbors see government as not being accessible, or that their voices are going to be ignored. The last 2 out of 3 years, we have seen property taxes increase. I think there's a conversation to be had as to how the government could have otherwise raised revenue without having to lean on this idea that we always just have to pull the lever and raise everyone's property taxes. There should have been more of a conversation between the mayor's office and the community as to what different solutions were actually available. But instead what we got was just this more punitive approach of just informing and telling people and speaking to them instead of speaking with them. And so one of my priorities as mayor is to host regular community meetings. The same way I've done as a state representative every month at our local library, I will continue to host meetings where it's going to be a public forum at our local school, at our local library, outside of our local park. Let's come together and have these conversations.
And with that said, people who are listening, and if you are in Providence, he's saying basically he wants your vote, but he also wants you to show up. After the vote. He wants you to come to him to make, to tell him your demands. And I think that's part of the problem. Tracy and I talk about this often, is that we don't go to our governors, our mayors, our city officials and say, look, this is happening in my community. What can you do to help? We just vote and expect them to read our minds for the next 4 years. So he's telling you to participate in the system.
And there are tools available. There's 311. There are other ways that you can communicate. I have pulled up on City Hall.
I said, she's not the one.
Several
or
times.
the two.
If I get a ticket because they said my trash can was ajar, baby, I'm showing up down to the police complex and you're going to hear from me. So you have to get involved. And I remember when I first moved here, there's a park across the street from
Beautiful
where I live.
park.
And one of the politicians, I believe she was a state rep, she would host family events all the time. And there would be a DJ and there would be backpack giveaways and things like that. And I really was impressed. And I think I mentioned to you before, I was really impressed with actually how accessible it is for us to communicate with our Rhode Island politicians compared to Boston. You all are much more accessible, believe it or not. But the fact is that, like you said, maybe, people don't realize that there is a level of connection there. But you mentioned transparency, and I think that's what I'm craving myself, is as someone who is active in communicating with my politicians. I love transparency. I love to be able to go to a website or to be able to research information quickly and easily. We were looking for a statistic yesterday, Shahida and I, and so we did Google it and we got some information. But a lot of times when you Google things, it leads you to social media, which is not necessarily a fact check or Wikipedia. So state websites, even especially with the increase in the taxes for homeowners, going on that website is like a brain drain.
Yep.
So that's
because we outsource it, because it takes you to a third-party website.
Absolutely, and you sometimes give up in frustration at those things. So,
and a part of that's by design.
Of course,
because you're not going to search for more answers. You're not even going to bother to advocate for solutions thereafter, because you're going to be exhausted, and not to mention working people have enough to stress out about, which is why, again, the priority has to be that we are facilitating a welcoming environment for folks to come and share their concerns and grievances as to what's happening in their community, versus you having to be up trying to figure out, how do I actually access this information and make sure that I'm speaking accurately? That pressure shouldn't be put on you.
Right.
So another thing we're in very dire situation right now as a whole country, not to mention a city. But so SNAP benefits are about to expire November 1st.
Notifications have gone out to recipients saying you do not expect.
So that's another issue that's a hunger issue that's going to really hit a lot of people.
Issue.
Exactly. Coming the first, as mayor, how do you, and also too, please give people advice on how to donate. But as mayor, if you were mayor today, how would you go about handling that situation?
I would immediately be approaching the governor's office the same way I am right now as a representative, and urging them to use some of our rainy day funds in order to use state funding to ensure that going into this upcoming month, everyone is made whole and will receive their SNAP benefits. We have a rainy day fund of over $300 million. In order to fund SNAP over the course of 1 month for Rhode Island recipients, it is about $24 million. We can afford to invest $24 million into making sure that people are fed. This is an absolute emergency. This is an example of when you use emergency funding. to make sure people are made whole. It's not enough to just tell someone to go to a food pantry, which right now is unfortunately going to be the case.
Yeah. And can you just kind of break down SNAP to, some of the viewers? Because I think so many people have a negative, purview of what SNAP is, but also how much it comes out of our taxes. People are thinking that, oh, I don't want to pay for this family to go to the supermarket and buy, hundreds of dollars of food on my dime. And it literally is just a dime.
Absolutely. So no, SNAP is our food nutrition program that essentially allows one to be able to shop at supermarkets, grocery stores, bodegas in order to buy food. And more often than not, it is households that are financially struggling. And these households tend to be working families, seniors, people with disabilities that are limited and cannot necessarily work a full-time job. So in other words,
stress seniors, because I don't think a lot of people see that as the picture.
Well, we have to remember, seniors are on fixed incomes. The same way people with disabilities are often on fixed incomes. And when we are saying fixed incomes, I am telling you that means that you are receiving your Social Security income check. A vast majority of that is going to your rent or to your mortgage, and then you are left with additional money that is probably being used to pay for utilities. So when it comes to this idea of like, well, where's the money for groceries? That's where SNAP is most effective, to make sure that you are able to budget with what you need, have a roof over your head, to have the lights on, and then thereafter be able to have an additional funding support through SNAP to be able to buy food. And right now what we're seeing from our federal government is just cruel. We need the Republicans from both the House and the Senate to end this government shutdown. They should not be holding healthcare hostage as a part of whether or not we are able to move forward and have a functioning federal government. This issue in of itself should have been avoided. And I'm disappointed that, again, it has not been. There's a lack of urgency because more often than not, when it comes to a program that predominantly benefits working people and those on fixed incomes, it tends to get overlooked. I grew up on SNAP. I know how important this program is because that is how my mom was able to afford putting food on the table and still being able to pay rent and utilities.
And most people don't realize most of the people that receive SNAP, especially in a certain age demographic, are actually working. So when you look at big companies and you go shopping at Walmart, wonder why Walmart doesn't pay their employees enough to actually live and feed their families. Because they don't. And then we have had this big discussion about minimum wage, and you actually worked on that legislation. And when is that due to kick in for Rhode Island?
January 1st, the minimum wage will be increasing to $16. And then January 1st of 2027, the minimum wage will be $17.
And I listened to a lot of people complain, like when I was younger, I worked at McDonald's, and I earned like $7. That's all I needed. First of all, we old people, we got to do better. And I'm talking about me. Not me, I'm talking about my age group. Have to do better because when you were making $7, that was 1980 something. And think about it. You were at home. There are people who work at McDonald's. They are independent. You think about all the people coming out of foster care, and they're going into the workforce, and they might only be able to get McDonald's while they're trying to further their education to get a job. And if they decide to work at McDonald's for the rest of their life, we should not shame them on that, but they should be able to sustain their lifestyle, and this is what he's working for.
Yeah, and it's challenging because, like you said, people are just trying to get by. You mentioned, if you're on a fixed income, you've got your shelter that you have to keep your roof over your head, and then you've got to pay your utilities. We haven't even gotten to transportation. Transportation's being cut, so services and bus lines are being cut. So maybe I think I mentioned when my son was in high school, if I drove him to school, it was a 7-minute drive. If he took the bus, it was a 1-hour ride.
Wow.
And he was just a high school student. That wasn't his means of income. But many people have to deal with that frustration. It's time away from your family. It's money being spent to either have a vehicle or to have Lyft or shared rides, or to take public transportation. All of that is all financially draining. So $17 an hour is not a lot. That's the minimum, and that's a great improvement for us on minimum wage, but it's not enough to sustain a family. It just isn't. And what is happening here is that the people who are the most vulnerable are suffering through this government shutdown. The elderly, underage children who have no control over what their parents do for work or anything like that. And all of that trickles down. It all impacts all of us, no matter what our socioeconomic background, because we're all going to pay the consequences for everything that's happening right now. If a family doesn't have, food on their table for Thanksgiving, that affects a lot of things: mental health, how much you pay attention in school, all of it. So, what are some things that you have planned as mayor to help build community, to help restore some of these injustices that are happening to us?
Again, I think a lot of it starts with us actually getting to know our neighbors. And we need to facilitate more community gatherings, whether it's like small concerts at our local parks, being able to have movie nights. A lot of that helps bring community together. So when there's moments of crisis, we know that we can lean on one another. And I think that's what we've been seeing in relation to what's happened with immigration recently. We've had ICE presence and detainments happening all across Providence over the last several months, whether it's outside the downtown courthouse in the Silver Lake neighborhood or the West End. ICE is here and they're actively taking people from our community. Thankfully, in these moments, community has stood up. Community has stood up, has mobilized, has shown up during some of these ICE sightings, has stopped ICE from detaining certain community members, or at the minimum, they've been able to document what is happening and then thereafter be in contact with loved ones that have been impacted. So we need to facilitate more opportunities for community to be able to come together in an authentic way with this idea of continuity. It's not enough to just have a one-off event. We need to put forward an expectation. Now, if we are here today as a community, it is our responsibility to get to know one another, to be able to lean on each other. I think what we will be seeing the next several weeks is an increased presence of donations going directly to different food pantries, which is going to be a result of community being able to work with one another and making sure that we're taking care of our most vulnerable. It's upsetting that it's gotten to this point, but it reminds us why it is so important that we actually do take the time to get to know one another and care for each other.
Mm-hmm. I remember a couple of years ago, well, actually before COVID, and bring up the transportation and, community. Kennedy Plaza was always full in the summertime. There were so many events. I was taking the bus then because, 57 straight down the street to my house. And it was very convenient. I still like that bus line. And I don't think that's going to be impacted. But I am thinking okay, this year I might, revisit the bus again. Only because there's really no reason not to. There really is no reason not for me to take the bus to work. But also in the summertime, when I would take the bus, before I would go home, there was always some kind of community event at Kennedy Plaza at that little park. What's the park called?
Burnside Park.
Burnside Park. At Burnside Park. Always. From Thursday to Saturday, to Sunday, there would always be something going on. And I noticed the last 4 years, nothing. And I know that they're saying they want to get rid of Kennedy and move the bus hub somewhere else, which I think will hurt many in the community who rely on it being the hub because it's right downtown. Instead of, I think they're trying to move it up near Brown.
No, near the train station.
Near the train station? Oh, okay, that's not so bad.
But there's a lot of question marks. So.
Okay, that's not so bad. But with Burnside and just redoing Kennedy Plaza, which I think I'm not in agreement with because I feel like it's such a central location for people who work downtown. And, you got the Bank of America building, you have the Citizens building, you have Rhode Island Housing. You just have so many different offices there. But what do you think you can do if you were a mayor to bring back some of that community back to that area? Because taking that away, again, stops us from knowing our neighbors. There were different ethnic groups that would have different trucks, different food events. I mean, I learned a lot during that time. and now it's just gone. And it doesn't seem like any administration wants to bring that back.
And it starts with working and partnering directly with local creative artists. We have way too many local artists to not be doing weekly community concerts near Kennedy
Yes,
Plaza,
and we were
Burnside
doing
Park.
that. It was go ahead.
No, you're right though, Gina. What you are describing.
I'm furious about it.
Because we have all the local talent right here in our backyard in order to have public programming. And there should not be an excuse as to why downtown is not further activated. And I mean, again, downtown, when we start thinking about the main bus hub, when we start thinking about Burnside Park, those are the areas that we should actively, as a community, be congregating towards. Instead, what has happened is Kennedy Plaza has been in disrepair. There's not an appetite to improve the physical conditions of Kennedy.
But it's a nice area if you just clean it up. I feel like moving it costs way more money than it is to just clean it up and make it. I mean, it's nice at the park. Go ahead, sir.
Absolutely. No, everything you are saying, like preaching to the choir. Absolutely. I mean, if I was mayor today, one of my main priorities around Kennedy Plaza would, one, be cleaning it up in the sense of making
Especially
sure.
since your office is right across the street.
Yeah, that starts with, again, just having more trash bins. Something as simple as that. Making sure we're a lot more conscientious of what those physical conditions are, but most importantly, making sure we're taking care of the people that tend to congregate there, which more often than not are unhoused.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot of homeless folks
And that
there.
has increased. Because,
Absolutely has.
again, before COVID, it really wasn't that bad. We had the food trucks out there. You had, like, again, all these different events. And then after COVID, it really has increased. And it's very sad to see. There are people in my office who don't walk for lunchtime because they say that, it's too dangerous. I walk every day.
But the juxtaposition is so ironic because you got Track 15, which in order to even get a meal at Track 15, you have to have a couple of dollars in your pocket.
Yeah.
Because
Well, not physical dollars because they don't accept
Well,
cash.
crypto.
they don't?
No, it's all digital.
I mean, I go there. I've been there like so many times.
Yeah, so
I didn't
it's either
realize.
your card or so it's.
But to your point,
it's
though, you need to
cashless.
have money, though, right?
But
to go.
then you've got the Graduate Hotel, affluent, like what is it, a 4-star, 3.5, 4-star hotel. So you have wealth there. You have the banks all around. So it's sad to see that contrast of the haves and the have-nots, and then everyone just kind of orbiting around each other and not really trying to come together as community. And I do see the unhoused people, but then I see the hotel workers sitting out back smoking a cigarette. We're all there, all of us, the entire community. I personally, I love the idea of bringing more arts because I birthed an artist and I'm all about that. And we are really friendly with a lot of spoken word artists here in the community, so we can connect you if you need some ideas. I would also like to talk to you about your ideas for STEM and STEAM, particularly for young people, and to help bridge the digital divide for our age group as well, because we're going to be the next seniors here pretty soon. I already have my AARP card
Me
and
too.
I flash it. But that's a big deal, especially with AI changing so rapidly and at breakneck speed. What's being done just from a technology standpoint to help citizens catch up?
So not enough. I think we certainly have a responsibility at this point to be very thoughtful about how we are informing our youth about what the future of technology looks like, while at the same time making sure that digital divide doesn't continue growing and we have a larger gap than before. And this is why I believe that third spaces like libraries are so valuable, because those can be our hubs to be able to have workshops in place for young people, for seniors, to be able to come together and learn a little more directly from, again, experts. We have world-renowned universities in our backyard. How are we not partnering with Brown more to be able to bring forward some of their faculty, some of their staff, graduate students, to come in and be able to teach our leaders of tomorrow as to what they should be expecting in relation to artificial intelligence? Why are we not doing a more conscientious partnership to bring workshops directly to our senior centers? That way there's a better understanding of folks to know and understand, this might be a scam, for example.
Yes.
We do have a lot of that, and it's getting scary with AI.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that all these safeguards are in place. It just requires facilitating partnerships in order to make it happen.
I agree. And maybe getting into the schools, because the young people, they're on top of everything. They're on top of, for the most part, as far as the social media standpoint goes. So they have a tie into technology that way. So maybe getting into the schools would be a good way to help facilitate them. Maybe some scholarships or certificate programs or something like that for the younger people. And like you said, getting to our elderly, because I think the only thing I've even seen was a billboard on the highway on 95. I don't even know if it was in Rhode Island or Massachusetts, but it, was all about avoiding scams. And I'm thinking to myself, how do you have time to read this billboard and drive safely when it's telling you how to, like, I'm going to crash into the car behind me trying to, those need to be in Kennedy Plaza.
Yes.
They need to be in public places where people can actually see them and engage with them. And, and I have a lot of concerns about what community looks like, because with this SNAP, upheaval, we already know that community convenience stores are a little bit higher priced than our chain stores. But I think that they function a lot on the SNAP program. So now we're going to see an issue with small business owners suffering.
Excellent point.
What are your ideas about that?
So I'm glad you bring that up,
Yeah.
because you're absolutely correct. I've worked with numerous small businesses just in Mount Pleasant alone to make sure that they were EBT certified. And as a result of that, they saw an increase in clientele. Because it was a lot more convenient, right? Hence the name convenience stores. It's a lot more convenient to be able to go outside, walk across the street, walk 2 blocks, and purchase whatever you need right then and there than having to take on a commute to get to Price Right or Stop and Shop. And so we are going to see economic hits that will impact our bodegas, that will impact our small businesses. And for that reason, I believe our local government has more of a responsibility to uplift and support and sustain our small businesses. For example, I often think about the ways that we can reform our commercial tax code. That way, a small business isn't paying the same tax rate as the Graduate Hotel in downtown Providence, assessed well over $10 million. The fact that our small businesses shouldn't be paying the same commercial tax rate as the industrial polluters harming our neighbors in South Providence.
That's insane.
And there's a lot to be said as well about how do we make our small businesses more welcoming and attractive, especially for folks that might be newer to the area. I believe very strongly that storefronts make a really big difference, especially when we start thinking about the ways we engage with local artists to help beautify the space. And the city should be offering matching funds or matching grants in order to help make that a reality.
I agree with all of that. My son, I joke that my son Noah keeps all of the community stores and bodegas in business in our neighborhood. When I go in his room, I see receipts from like all the corner stores, and I used to kind of get on him and say, Noah, why are you paying like $6 for a bag of Doritos? I can just put it on the grocery list. He knows every shop owner in the community.
And they know him.
And I stopped, chastising him about it, because he's helping our neighborhood thrive. So if he pays, 3 times as much for a bag of Doritos that I would at the grocery store, he's built a relationship. They know him, he knows them, and he's helped, the economy flow. And that's, I think, what matters here. I think we're too busy worrying about, well, how does this affect me, when the taxes that we pay, or whatever we pay into, and even people who are on SNAP pay taxes, like duh. We all pay taxes, so they've also put into that pot, so they're paying themselves back as well. We need to just, like you said, solidify and form stronger communities. But I think maybe getting the word out about these activities is probably going to be something to work on, is letting people know that not only is it available, but we welcome you.
Exactly.
But you also hit on something that, how the bodegas and the convenience stores charge 3 times as much.
They do.
But then you have to look at the fact what you just said is that they're being charged taxes the same as big corporate businesses.
Right.
So they have to make, their ends meet by charging the community. And maybe if their taxes were lower as, a small business owner, it wouldn't have to be 3 times as much. I mean, $6 for a bag of Doritos is just sinful.
Listen, I was mortified.
What is happening?
But the ROI that he's getting, if he does that once a week, and he one time he bought a pizza and it was $15, I was like, no.
But like a big pizza or just
a frozen pizza. But
that,
to your
look
point,
what they have to pay in taxes, and I'm one of those people. I'm not gonna go to a convenience store,
Right.
but now I'm like, oh, Shahida, just go and help out because they're paying that crazy amount for taxes. When
And a lot of times,
how do you compete with Brown?
If you are someone of an ethnic community, the bodegas have your ingredients.
Exactly.
If you need culantro,
Very tailored.
okay.
Oh, here they go.
If you need yuca, you might not be able to get that at other places. So you're going to go to these places, and I'm just seeing prices increasing if SNAP is no longer available. So again, more
Great
people
point.
suffer. Even if you do work every day and use your own funds to buy food, now you're impacted.
It helps stimulate the economy. And this is why I want to reiterate that the governor has an opportunity to be able to allocate emergency funding to ensure that everyone gets their SNAP benefits.
So we need to be calling the governor's office.
Absolutely.
Is it 311? Is that his number, 311?
We need to be calling the governor's office. So we're gonna wrap up. But so any final thoughts? Because I have one final thought that I just need to bring up before we end. Your fashion game.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
And we're vibing. Do you see how we're like kind of? Well, you two are actually more so vibing, but you've got
I made sure I did the socks.
Hey, what are these sharks here?
The fashion game is fashioning.
Oh, thank you.
Love it.
Thank you. I mean, I will say I have a very strict rule. I try not to pay more than $200 for a suit, and so you can often find me at the clearance aisle over at H&M, Marshalls,
Love it.
Express, and even
Same.
Express, even Men's Warehouse. When it comes to the clearance sales, you'll be able to find
I
some.
only buy
We'll
on
talk,
clearance.
we'll talk.
But any final thoughts to the people of Providence, as especially as we're getting ready to go into this? We don't know what's going to happen after November 1st, but your final thoughts.
Well, right now we are in a time of crisis, and for that reason, we need a city government that is going to be just as ambitious as the working people and the creative artists that make our city thrive. I have ambitious ideas to make sure that we are building more housing that is designed for the working people and families that already call Providence home. I'm excited about being able to put forward an agenda centered around fairness, so everyone who continues to call Providence home can remain stable and continue doing so. And so my message to our city, to the people that are listening, is that we have to think big about the ways that we're going to take care of one another. We have to think big about what the future of our city looks like in a way that reflects our needs and also reflects our communities. And this is why I'm fighting to build a Providence for all. This is why I'm running for mayor, and why I'm very pleased to be able to have very intimate moments like this where we can have a conversation as to what's important to our neighbors.
Excellent. And please tell people where they can find you on social media as well as your websites and other information.
So I am across all social media platforms at David Morales PVD, and our website is davidmoralespvd.com.
I love continuity and branding. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Well, until next time, folks, I hope that you learned something on this episode, and Tracy and I will see you next week.
Take care.